The locomotive's whistle cut through the October air like a rusty blade, announcing its arrival at Deer Hollow with a final, exhausted wheeze. Steam billowed across the platform, mixing with the mountain fog that perpetually clung to this timber town carved from wilderness. 6 days. 6 days Iris Delaney had endured that cramped passenger car, her spine straight as pine lumber against the hard wooden seat, her gray traveling dress now bearing the dust of half a continent. Not one man had dared sit beside her during the entire journey. She'd watched them approach salesmen with their oiled mustaches, miners heading to new claims, cowboys returning from cattle drives, only to see their eyes widen at her height when she stood to stretch. 6 feet in her boots, shoulders broad from years of farm work, hands that could birth a calf or split kindling with equal efficiency. They'd tip their hats politely enough, then find urgent business in other cars. Iris gathered her carpetbag and stepped onto the platform, the wooden boards groaning beneath her weight. The October wind bit through her wool shawl, carrying the sharp scent of fresh-cut pine and wood smoke. Deer Hollow spread before her like something scraped together by desperate hands, a main street of rutted mud. False front buildings leaning against each other for support, and mountains pressing close on all sides like prison walls. She'd made herself a promise when she'd left Missouri, repeated it like a prayer through every mile of track no man would touch her that first night, not until she knew his character, understood his intentions, measured his worth against something more substantial than sweet words in a letter. Her body was her own, her choices sacred. She'd rather sleep in a stable than compromise that vow. The platform slowly emptied of passengers, leaving her standing alone among the mail sacks and freight boxes. Where was he, Merritt Kane had promised in his letters, those carefully penned missives that spoke of building a life together in the territories, of needing a strong woman who wouldn't wilt at the first snowfall or faint at the sight of blood? A true partner, he'd written, not some china doll to set upon a shelf. A man emerged from the telegraph office, tall and lean, wearing a black suit that had seen better decades. His face was all angles and shadows, topped with hair the color of dried tobacco. He walked toward her with measured steps, like someone approaching a horse that might bolt. "Miss Delaney," she nodded, adjusting her grip on the carpetbag. "Mr. Kane." He stopped 10 feet away, his pale eyes traveling from her travel-worn boots to the crown of her dark hair, pinned severely beneath her bonnet. His Adam's apple bobbed once, twice. "You're considerably taller than I imagined. You didn't specify height requirements in your advertisement." Her voice came out steady, though her stomach had begun to churn. She knew that look, had seen it on her brother's friends, on men at church socials, on every suitor who'd come calling only to find excuses to leave early. Merritt's laugh held no warmth. "No, I suppose I didn't. I just assumed." He gestured vaguely at her person. "When a man writes seeking a wife, he pictures certain things, delicate things. You look like you could plow a field yourself." "I have, many times." "That's not—" He removed his hat, worried the brim between thin fingers. "This won't do. I'm sorry you've come all this way, but this simply won't do. I need a wife who'll make me look respectable, important, not one who'll have folks wondering if she might wrestle me to the ground." The words hit like winter sleet, each one finding the soft places between her ribs. But Iris had learned long ago not to show the wound. She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin. "You wrote that you wanted a wife, not a doll." "I wanted a woman." His voice cracked on the word. "A proper woman who knows her place, who'll stand behind her husband, not tower over him like a what, Mr. Kane?" Her voice dropped low, dangerous. "Finish your thought." He backed away, nearly stumbling over a mail sack. "The stage office is down the street. There's a morning coach back east. I'll pay for your ticket. It's the least I can do." "Keep your money." Iris hefted her carpetbag higher. "I'll make my own way, as I always have." She turned and walked away, each step measured and deliberate despite the trembling in her legs. Behind her, she heard Merritt call out something about being reasonable, about understanding the situation. But his words dissolved into the general noise of the town horses whickering, timber saws whining, men shouting orders at the mill. The main street stretched before her, a gauntlet of saloons and supply stores, boarding houses and bathhouses. Men lounged against hitching posts, their conversations dying as she passed. She felt their eyes like brands on her back, heard the low whistles and crude chuckles that followed in her wake. Lord almighty, look at the size of her. Bet she could break a man clean in half. Hey there, tall timber. You looking for work? Got a team of oxen, need a new driver. The laughter rolled down the street like thunder. Iris kept walking, her mother's voice echoing in her memory. Hold your head high, girl. You're built like your grandmother German stock, strong as oak. The right man won't want you smaller. He'll want you strong enough to stand beside him when the storms come. But where was that man not in Missouri, where she'd been called too much woman by every potential suitor? Not on that train, where grown men had chosen to stand rather than share her bench, and certainly not here in Deer Hollow, embodied by the coward who'd summoned her across half a country only to reject her like spoiled goods. The Grand Peak Saloon squatted at the corner of Main and Pine, its bat-wing doors swinging with constant traffic. A cluster of men had gathered on the boardwalk outside, passing a bottle between them, their work clothes stained with sawdust and tree sap. As Iris approached, one of them, a thick-necked brute with arms like ham hocks, stepped directly into her path. Well, well, you must be Merritt's mail-order bride. Heard him talking about you for weeks. His breath stank of rot-gut whiskey and tooth decay. Guess he decided to throw you back. Can't say I blame him. Man wants something soft in his bed, not something that might crush him flat. Step aside. Iris met his bloodshot gaze without flinching. Or what you'll make me. He spread his arms wide, playing to his audience. Tell you what, honey, seeing as you're already bought and paid for, how about we discuss a new arrangement? I got a cabin needs a woman's touch, and I ain't particular about size. Might even like a woman with some fight in her. The other men hooted and hollered their encouragement. One particularly bold soul reached for her carpet bag. Let me help you with that, darling. Looks heavy for a lady. Touch my belongings and lose the hand. The words came out flat, matter of fact. She'd butchered hogs with duller knives than the edge in her voice. The man jerked back, but the damage was done. The pack had scented something vulnerability, perhaps, or just the exotic thrill of a woman who didn't simper and shrink. They pressed closer, cutting off her routes of escape, their intentions written plain in whiskey-bright eyes and grabbing hands. That's when she heard it, the distinct sound of spurs on boardwalk, slow and deliberate. The crowd's attention shifted past her shoulder, and something in their collective expression changed from predatory to wary. Evening, boys. The voice was low, graveled, like river stones grinding together. Iris didn't turn, didn't dare take her eyes off the immediate threats, but she felt the crowd's energy shift like wind changing direction. Just having a friendly conversation with the lady, Cassian. The thick-necked man's voice had lost its swagger. No harm meant. Funny thing about conversations. The spurs came closer, stopped just behind Iris's left shoulder. Usually both parties look willing to participate. This lady looks like she'd rather be anywhere else. Ain't your business, Wade. Maybe not. A pause waited with meaning. Then again, maybe I'm making it my business. You boys know I don't care for unfair odds. 6 against 1 strikes me as particularly yellow. The silence stretched taut as fence wire. Iris could smell the newcomer now leather and hoarse, wood smoke and something sharp like pine resin. Still, she didn't turn. Wouldn't give these jackals the satisfaction of seeing her seek protection. Finally, the thick-necked man spat tobacco juice onto the boards. Come on, boys. Whiskey's getting warm inside. They filed past in sullen silence, though more than one shot dark looks at both Iris and her unexpected defender. Only when the saloon doors swung shut behind the last of them did she allow herself to turn. The man called Cassian Wade stood with his thumbs hooked in his gun belt, watching the saloon with the patience of someone prepared to wait all night if necessary. Everything about him spoke of hard-use scarred leather chaps, a coat patched at the elbows, boots worn down at the heels, but he wore it all with an easy confidence, like a man comfortable in his own skin. Dark hair curled over his collar, and when he finally looked at her, his eyes were the color of deep water, neither blue nor green, but something in between. "I ain't saving you, ma'am." He touched the brim of his hat. "Just walking beside you, if you'll have the company. Streets can be uncertain after dark." Iris studied him, the calloused hands, the sun-weathered face, the way he maintained a respectful distance without making her feel abandoned. Here was honesty. At least, no false promises or flowery words. "I'm looking for lodging. Respectable lodging. May's boarding house, 2 blocks down on Cedar Street. Clean beds, fair prices, and May Garrett doesn't tolerate nonsense under her roof." He gestured down the street. "I was heading that direction myself." They walked in silence, Iris matching his unhurried pace. The town seemed less threatening with a witness, though she knew better than to trust this temporary reprieve. Word would spread fast Merritt's rejected bride, the circus freak too tall and broad for even a desperate man to stomach. By morning, every soul in Deer Hollow would know her shame. "You came on the afternoon train?" It wasn't a question. "Yes. Long journey. 6 days from Missouri." He nodded, like that explained everything worth knowing. They passed the mercantile, the barber shop, the narrow alley where someone had strung washing lines between buildings. Normal sights of a normal town, except nothing felt normal when you were 6 feet tall and freshly rejected. "There." Cassian pointed to a 2-story house painted butter yellow, lamplight glowing warm in the windows. "May'll take good care of you." He walked her to the front gate, but no further. "Welcome to Deer Hollow, Miss Delaney, Iris Delaney." "Cassian Wade." He touched his hat again. "I hope you find what you're looking for here." She watched him walk away, spurs chiming softly in the darkness. He hadn't asked why she'd come, hadn't mentioned the scene at the station or the ugly confrontation outside the saloon, hadn't offered unwanted sympathy or unsolicited advice, just walked beside her when she needed it, then left her to make her own choices. Iris hefted her carpet bag and climbed the steps to May's front door, her vow still intact despite everything. No man had touched her, not Merritt with his coward's rejection, not the drunks with their grasping hands, not even the quietly decent Cassian Wade. The night was young yet, and she was still her own woman. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new humiliations, new tests of her resolve. But tonight, she would keep her promise to herself. Tonight, she remained untouched and unbowed. May Garrett's boarding house smelled of beeswax polish and yesterday's bread, a combination that made Iris's empty stomach clench. The older woman had welcomed her without questions, shown her to a small but clean room on the 2nd floor, and promised hot water for washing in the morning. Now, lying on the narrow bed and staring at the pressed tin ceiling, Iris couldn't push away the memory of Merritt's pale, shocked face. Dawn came gray and reluctant through the lace curtains. Iris dressed in her second-best dress, brown wool, serviceable and plain, and pinned her hair back with the same severe efficiency that had carried her through 6 days of train travel. Her reflection in the spotted mirror showed what it always showed: too much of everything. Too tall, too broad, too strong, too much woman for a world that preferred its females delicate as china teacups. The dining room held 3 other boarders, all men who glanced up from their porridge with varying degrees of curiosity. Iris took a seat at the far end of the table, accepting a bowl from May with quiet thanks. "Sleep well, dear." May's voice held the practiced kindness of someone who'd seen too many lost souls pass through her doors. "Yes, thank you." She was halfway through her breakfast when the front door banged open. Merritt Kane stood in the doorway, hat in hand, his thin face flushed with either cold or determination. "Miss Delaney, I need a word." The other boarders suddenly found their porridge fascinating. Iris set down her spoon with careful deliberation. "I believe we said all that needed saying yesterday. Mr. Kane." "Please." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I've been awake all night, thinking perhaps I was hasty." May bustled forward. "Mr. Kane, this is a respectable establishment. If you have business with Miss Delaney, you'll conduct it proper-like, in the parlor." Iris rose, her height causing Merritt to take an involuntary step backward. "Very well. 5 minutes." The parlor was cramped with horsehair furniture and china shepherdesses. Iris remained standing, forcing Merritt to crane his neck to meet her eyes. "I've reconsidered," he began, worrying his hat brim between nervous fingers. "A man shouldn't make important decisions based on first impressions. You've come so far, and I did give my word." "Your word." Iris tasted the bitterness of the phrase. "The same word that promised you wanted a partner, not an ornament." "I was surprised. You must understand. When a man pictures his future wife, he pictures someone who makes him feel bigger, not smaller." Color flooded Merritt's face. "That's unfair. I have a position in this town. I manage the Western Union office. People expect certain things from a man in my position, such as a wife who looks like a wife, who can pour tea and host ladies' circles and make me appear." He swallowed hard. "Successful. Established." Iris moved to the window, looking out at the muddy street where men were already heading to the timber mills. "You wrote that you wanted a wife, not a doll." "I know what I wrote." The words burst out sharp with frustration. "I wrote what I thought I wanted. A strong woman for a hard country. But when I saw you standing there, so—" He gestured helplessly. "You're taller than me. Miss Delaney. You look like you could lift me over your head. How's that going to look at church socials, at town meetings?" She turned to face him, letting him see the full effect of her height, her presence. "It will look like a man who values substance over appearance, who chose a wife who could stand beside him through whatever storms these mountains bring." "Stand beside me?" His laugh held an edge of hysteria. "You'd stand over me every day, in every way. People would see you first and me second. They'd snicker behind their hands. Wonder who wore the pants in our household." "And that matters more to you than having a true partner, someone who could birth your children, tend your home, work alongside you to build something real." Merritt's Adam's apple bobbed. "You don't understand. I've worked too hard to establish myself here. I won't be made a laughingstock." "Then why are you here now?" He had the grace to look ashamed. "Because I'm not cruel. You came all this way on my word. I'll find you work. The hotel needs a laundress, or perhaps the mill." "A laundress?" Iris's voice dropped dangerously low. "You'd take a woman you deemed worthy enough to marry and suggest she wash strangers' undergarments. It's honest work." "So is being a wife. At least, it is when both parties are honest about what they want." She moved past him toward the door. "Keep your charity. Mr. Kane, I'll make my own way." "You're being unreasonable." He followed her into the hallway. "I'm trying to help a woman alone in a town like this, with no connections, no prospects." "I have one prospect." Iris paused at the foot of the stairs. "Self-respect. That's more than you can offer." May appeared from the kitchen, dish towel in hand, her expression making it clear she'd heard every word. "Mr. Kane, I believe it's time you left." "Mrs. Garrett, surely you can talk sense into her. She needs to understand the reality of her situation." "The reality," May said quietly, "is that you're a small man more concerned with appearances than character. The door is that way." Merritt's face went from red to white. "You'll regret this, Miss Delaney. Both of you will. When winter comes and you're desperate for work, for food, for shelter, don't come crying to me, I won't. Iris met his gaze steadily. I've never cried to any man, and I won't start with one who measures worth by inches instead of character. He slammed out, leaving silence in his wake. May sighed, untying her apron. Well, that's torn it. He'll spread word all over town by noon. Every busybody and gossip will know Merritt Kane's mail-order bride was too much woman for him to handle. Let them talk. But Iris felt the weight of it settling on her shoulders like a yoke. In a town this size, reputation was currency, and hers was already spent. She returned to her room, sitting on the bed to count her remaining funds. The train ticket had taken most of her savings. She had enough for 2 weeks' board, maybe 3 if she skipped meals. After that, a knock interrupted her calculations. May stood in the doorway, arms crossed. That fool Merritt's been flapping his gums at the Western Union for weeks about his bride coming. Built you up like Helen of Troy. He did. Now he'll tear you down twice as fast to save his pride. I know. Do you? This ain't some big city where a woman can disappear into the crowd. Deer Hollow's got maybe 300 souls, and every one of them will have an opinion about you by supper time. Iris straightened her shoulders. I've lived with opinions all my life. May studied her with sharp eyes. I imagine you have, well, opinions don't pay the bills. You any good with a needle? Tolerably good. Better than tolerable, I'd wager, from the look of that dress. Made it yourself. Yes. Thought so. Town's got no proper seamstress since Louise Harper took fever last spring. Women been making do, ordering from catalogs when they can afford it. Might be opportunity there, if you're willing to work for it. Hope flickered, fragile as candle flame. Would they hire me after this? May snorted. Honey, women in this town would hire the devil himself if he could let out a decent seam. You show them what you can do. They won't care if you're 7 feet tall and green as grass. Before Iris could respond, voices drifted up from the street. Male voices, loud with the particular joviality of men sharing a crude joke. Through the window, she saw a group gathered outside the mercantile, Merritt at their center, gesturing wildly. Swear she could have been a wrestler in a traveling show, shoulders broader than mine, hands like hammers. Can you imagine trying to be a husband to that? The laughter that followed was coarse, knowing. Iris turned away from the window, but the words followed her. Poor Merritt. Ordered a wife and got a workhorse instead. Bet she'd break the bed frame on the wedding night. Break more than that, if you know what I mean. May's hand touched her shoulder, surprisingly gentle. Don't listen to those fools. Half of them can't keep a woman because they're drunks, and the other half because they're brutes. Merritt Kane's the worst of both, weak as water and mean as a snake when he thinks he's safe. It doesn't matter, but it did. Every word was another stone in the wall between her and any hope of a normal life in this town. You're right, it doesn't. May's voice turned brisk. What matters is proving them wrong. You get dressed in your best, and we'll walk down to the mercantile. Margaret Brennan's been complaining about needing her Sunday dress altered for weeks. Time she met someone who could help. Iris looked at the older woman. Why are you helping me? Maybe because I was young once, in a town that wasn't kind to women who didn't fit the mold. Maybe because I can't stand Merritt Kane and enjoy seeing him shown for the fool he is. May smiled, and it was sharp as a skinning knife. Or maybe because this town needs shaking up, and you look like just the woman to do it. Outside, the crowd around Merritt grew larger, their laughter carrying on the morning air like the cawing of crows over carrion. But in the small room above May's boarding house, 2 women prepared for war, armed with nothing more than needle, thread, and the determination to prove that a woman's worth couldn't be measured by the expectations of small men. The battle for Iris Delaney's place in Deer Hollow had begun. The mercantile smelled of pickle brine and leather, coffee beans and coal oil. Margaret Brennan looked up from her ledger as the bell above the door chimed, her welcoming smile faltering when she recognized her customers. News traveled fast in Deer Hollow, faster than spring snowmelt down the mountain. May. Her nod was cautious. And you must be… Iris Delaney. Iris kept her voice level. Professional. She'd dressed in her best the dark blue wool with the white collar she'd tatted herself. Mrs. Garrett tells me you need alterations done. Margaret's gaze traveled up and up, taking in Iris's full height, behind the counter. Her husband, Harold, pretended to arrange tobacco tins while listening to every word. I did mention something about my Sunday dress. Margaret fidgeted with her pencil. But I hadn't decided. Perhaps you'd like to see examples of my work. Iris stepped forward, letting the morning light from the window illuminate the detailed stitching on her cuffs, the perfectly set sleeves, the invisible mending where she'd repaired a tear. I trained with my mother, who learned from hers. 3 generations of needlework. May added smoothly. Miss Delaney made that dress herself. Every stitch. Margaret leaned closer, professional interest overcoming social hesitation. The buttonholes are French-worked, and is that Belgian lace on the collar? Irish, my grandmother's pattern. Iris turned her wrist to show the delicate edging. I can do alterations, certainly, but also new construction. Children's clothes, men's shirts, ladies' fine wear. We order from Chicago, Harold interrupted from behind the counter. When we need something special. And wait 3 months for delivery. Margaret shot back. If it arrives at all, remember my sister's wedding dress lost somewhere between here and Denver? That was different. How? Margaret's chin lifted. Because I had to wear my old Sunday best to my only sister's wedding. She turned back to Iris. What would you charge for taking in a bodice? I'd need to see the garment, but typically… The door burst open. 3 women entered in a flutter of wool shawls and worried whispers, barely pausing when they saw Iris. The youngest, heavily pregnant, was crying. Margaret, we need help. The eldest, steel-haired and sharp-eyed, supported the pregnant woman. Sarah's time has come, but Doc Morrison is 20 miles out at the Kruger farm. Won't be back until tomorrow at best. Margaret paled. The midwife, drunk again, found her passed out behind the saloon. The third woman, middle-aged and practical-looking, glanced at May. You helped birth babies before, haven't you? Not in 15 years. My hands aren't steady enough anymore. May's face creased with worry. Sarah, honey, how close are the pains? The pregnant woman, Sarah, gasped through another contraction. Close! Fast! This is my third! They come quick now! Iris stepped forward. I've delivered babies. Every eye in the store turned to her. Harold dropped a tin of tobacco. You… The steel-haired woman's tone dripped skepticism. 12 successful deliveries back home. Twins once. Iris kept her voice calm. Matter of fact. I helped the midwife in our county for 3 years. Sarah moaned, doubling over. Fluid splashed onto the wooden floor. Her water's broken, Iris observed. She needs to lie down now. Is there somewhere… The back room. Margaret was already moving. Harold, get clean linens from the shelf. Mrs. Patterson, we need hot water. The steel-haired woman, Mrs. Patterson, hadn't moved. You expect us to trust her, a stranger Merritt Keynes rejected? Would you rather deliver the baby yourself? May's voice could have stripped paint. Because that's your choice, Iris or you. Another contraction hit. Sarah screamed. Please, she gasped. I don't care who helps, just help. That decided it. They half-carried Sarah to the storeroom, clearing bolts of fabric from the long cutting table. Iris shed her good dress down to her chemise and petticoat, rolling up her sleeves. I need carbolic acid if you have it, alcohol if you don't, clean rags, all you can find, a sharp knife, cleaned in boiling water, string for the cord. She was already examining Sarah, gentle despite her large hands. You're doing fine, Mrs. Henley, Sarah Henley. Mrs. Henley, the baby's positioned well. This will be quick, but we need to work together." What followed was controlled chaos. Iris issued orders with quiet authority, positioning Sarah, checking the baby's progress, keeping everyone calm. Margaret proved surprisingly helpful, following instructions without question. Even Mrs. Patterson fell in line, though she watched Iris like a hawk watching a snake. "I can see the head," Iris announced after what felt like hours but was probably less than one. "Sarah, on the next pane. I need you to push hard." Sarah bore down, her face red with effort. The baby's head emerged, dark hair slick with birth fluids. "Once more," Iris encouraged. "You're almost there." The shoulders followed, then the rest in a rush. Iris caught the infant expertly, clearing its mouth and nose. A thin cry filled the room. "A girl," she announced, wrapping the baby in clean linen. "Perfect and healthy." Sarah sobbed with relief. Reaching for her daughter, Iris laid the infant on her mother's chest, then dealt efficiently with the afterbirth and cleanup. Her movements were sure, professional, wasting nothing. "You've done this before, Mrs." Patterson's statement held a note of grudging respect. "Many times. My mother was the closest thing to a doctor in our part of Missouri. I learned by watching, then doing." Iris washed her hands in the basin of hot water. "The bleeding is normal, should stop soon. She needs rest, warmth, and plenty of fluids." "Thank you." Sarah's voice was weak but fervent. "Thank you so much." Iris smiled, the first genuine smile she'd worn since stepping off the train. "You did the work. I just caught—" A commotion outside interrupted the moment. Male voices getting closer. Heard screaming from the mercantile. Someone said Sarah Henley. Doc Morrison still gone. The storeroom door opened. Several men crowded the doorway, including the thick-necked brute from yesterday's confrontation at the saloon. But at their front stood Cassian Wade, hat in hand, concern creasing his weathered features. "Heard there was trouble. Sarah, you all right?" "Fine, Cassian." Sarah managed a tired smile. "Thanks to her." Every male eye fixed on Iris, standing there in her undergarments, blood on her petticoat, hair coming loose from its pins. She lifted her chin, daring anyone to comment. Cassian's gaze traveled over the scene: the healthy baby, the exhausted but safe mother, the efficiently organized birthing supplies. "Good work," he said simply. "Real good work. Anyone could have—" "No, Mrs." Patterson interrupted Iris. "Not anyone. I've seen plenty of births go wrong. You knew what you were doing." She paused, visibly wrestling with herself. "I misjudged you." The thick-necked man sneered. "Don't mean nothing. Any farm woman can catch a baby. Doesn't make her—" "Shut your mouth, Garrett." Cassian's voice carried quiet menace. "Or I'll shut it for you." You taking her side again must be hoping for something in return. Cassian moved so fast Iris barely saw it. One moment he was in the doorway. The next he had Garrett pressed against the wall, forearm across his throat. "I ain't saving you, ma'am," he said over his shoulder to Iris, echoing his words from the night before. "Just walking beside you, but this one needs a lesson in manners." "Let him go." Iris retrieved her dress, pulling it on with steady hands. "He's not worth the trouble." Cassian held Garrett's gaze a moment longer, then stepped back. Garrett slumped against the wall, gasping. "You're right," Cassian said mildly. "He ain't." He turned to the other men. "Show's over, boys. Give the lady some privacy." They dispersed reluctantly. Cassian lingered a moment longer. "May's place for supper tonight. She makes a fair venison stew on Wednesdays." He touched his hat brim. "If you're interested in the company." Then he was gone, spurs chiming as he walked away. Margaret and Mrs. Patterson exchanged glances Iris couldn't interpret. "Well," Margaret said briskly, "about that dress alteration. When could you start?" The rest happened quickly. Word spread through Deer Hollow like wildfire. Merritt Kane's rejected bride had delivered Sarah Henley's baby when no one else could help. By afternoon, Iris had 3 firm commissions for work and promises of more to come. She sat in May's parlor that evening, letting out a seam on Margaret Brennan's Sunday dress, when footsteps on the porch announced a visitor. May answered the door. "Evening, Cassian. Stew's on the stove if you're hungry." "Evening, May." His voice carried warmth. "Brought my shirt that needs mending, if Miss Delaney's taking work." He entered the parlor, seeming to fill the small space. His shirt was indeed torn a long rent in the sleeve that looked like an axe had caught it. "Occupational hazard," he explained, laying it on the side table. "Logging's hard on clothes." "You work the timber camps." Iris kept her eyes on her stitching. "Sometimes. Also guide hunters. Work cattle when it's needed. Bit of everything." He settled into the chair across from her, movements easy despite his size. "Heard you had an eventful day." "News travels fast. Only thing faster is lightning coming down these mountains." He paused. "You did good today. Sarah's telling everyone who'll listen how you saved her and the baby." "I did what anyone with training would do." "Maybe, but you were the one who stepped forward when others hung back." He leaned back, studying her. "That takes courage." Iris finally looked up, meeting those deep-water eyes. "Or desperation. A woman needs work to eat." "True enough." He didn't look away. "Still takes courage." May called from the kitchen about supper being ready. As they rose, Cassian paused beside Iris's chair. "That shirt's no rush? Whenever you have time." He smiled slightly. "Gives me an excuse to come back." Throughout supper, he was the perfect gentleman passing dishes, keeping conversation light, including both women equally. He spoke of the town, the mountains, the coming winter, safe topics that skirted around anything personal. Only as he prepared to leave did he address Iris directly again. "I meant what I said last night. I ain't trying to save you, can see you don't need saving. But if you want company while you find your feet here, I'm offering—" Iris considered him this quiet man who defended her without making her feel weak, who offered friendship without demanding gratitude. "I'll have your shirt ready by Friday," she said finally. He smiled then, a real smile that changed his whole face. "Friday it is." After he left, May chuckled. "That one's been alone too long. Nice to see him showing interest in something besides trees and cattle. He's just being neighborly." "Honey, Cassian Wade doesn't do neighborly. That man's particular about who he spends time with." May gathered the dishes. "You could do worse." Iris returned to her sewing, pushing aside the flutter in her chest. She had work now, a chance to build something here despite Merritt's rejection. That was enough. But as she worked, she found herself thinking about Friday, and a pair of deep-water eyes that looked at her without seeing something too big, too strong, too much. Just a woman worth knowing. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of thread and fabric. Iris's hands, already strong from farm work, adapted quickly to the delicate precision of fine needlework. Word spread through Deer Hollow like autumn leaves on the wind. The tall woman at May's place could work miracles with cloth. She sat by the parlor window one afternoon, catching the best light for the detailed embroidery on Eleanor Patterson's anniversary dress. Yes, the same Mrs. Patterson who doubted her at Sarah's birthing had become one of her steadiest customers. The steel-haired matron had appeared at May's door 3 days after the birth, stiff as starched collar. "I need a dress for my 40th wedding anniversary," she'd announced. "Something that doesn't make me look like I'm trying to be 20 again." Now. Iris worked tiny silver roses along the bodice, each petal a testament to 4 decades of marriage. Through the window, she watched the daily life of Deer Hollow loggers heading to the mills, women hauling water, children darting between wagon wheels. "That's beautiful work." May paused behind her chair, studying the embroidery. "Where'd you learn to make roses like that?" "My grandmother. She came from Bavaria, brought her needlework patterns hidden in her Bible. Iris snipped a thread. Said beauty could survive anything if you knew how to create it with your own hands. Wise woman. May settled into the opposite chair with her mending basket. Speaking of creating things, Cassian's been by the mercantile twice this week. Harold says he's never seen the man so interested in checking the mail. Iris kept her eyes on her work. Mail comes through regular. Makes sense to check it. And I suppose it makes sense he always asks after you while he's there. He's been kind. They've all been kind. Once they saw I could be useful. May's needle paused. Is that what you think, that they only accept you because you're useful? Isn't it true? Lord, child, you really believe that? May set down her mending. Let me tell you something about Cassian Wade. That man's lived here 8 years. In all that time, I've never seen him show particular interest in any woman. Not the banker's pretty daughter. Not the widow Carmichael who threw herself at him every Sunday after church. Perhaps he prefers his solitude. Perhaps he was waiting for someone who didn't bore him to tears. May picked up her needle again. You know what he said when Harold asked why he kept coming by Saeed he'd finally found someone in this town worth talking to, who didn't expect him to be anything but what he was. Before Iris could respond, boot steps sounded on the porch, heavy, measured steps she'd learned to recognize. May smiled knowingly. Speak of the devil. Cassian entered at May's call, hat in hand, carrying something wrapped in brown paper. His shirt, the one Iris had mended, showed careful wear, the repair barely visible. Afternoon. Ladies, Miss Delaney. I wondered if you might help me with something. He unwrapped the package, revealing fabric deep blue wool. Fine quality. Enough for a woman's dress. My sister in Oregon City sent this. Her letter says she's too far gone with child to travel for Christmas. Asked me to find someone who could make it into something for her. He looked almost shy. This man who faced down drunken bullies without blinking. Would you consider taking the commission? Iris touched the fabric. Quality goods. The kind that would take careful handling. Of course. Do you have her measurements? In the letter. He handed over folded pages. She's particular about fit, says most seamstresses don't account for her height. Height, Iris looked up sharply. Runs in the family. His mouth quirked. She's near 6 foot herself. Used to complain no dresses were ever long enough in the arms. Something warm unfurled in Iris's chest. I understand the problem. I'll make sure the proportions are right. Figured you might? He paused, weight shifting. There's a lumber crew heading out tomorrow to the high camps. I'll be guiding them. Gone maybe a week. Wanted to leave this with you before I left. A week's a long time in the mountains. Winter's coming early this year. You noticed that too. He seemed pleased. Most folks don't read the signs. The way the birds are flocking. How the squirrels are storing we'll have snow before November. They fell into easy conversation about weather patterns, mountain signs, the kind of practical knowledge that meant survival in the territories. May excused herself to the kitchen, humming suspiciously. You know these mountains well for someone newly arrived. Cassian observed. Different mountains, same principles. I grew up reading weather, watching animals. Had to know when to bring the stock in, when to harvest before a freeze. Useful skills out here. He stood to leave, then turned back. When I return, would you... That is, the town's having a harvest dance. Nothing fancy, just neighbors gathering before winter sets in proper. Would you accompany me? Iris's needle stilled. A dance, in public, where everyone would see them together, draw conclusions, make judgments. I'm not much for dancing, she said carefully. Neither am I. We could not dance together. His smile was self-deprecating. Stand by the punch bowl, criticize the fiddler, leave early when our feet hurt. Despite herself, Iris smiled. That's the most honest dance invitation I've ever received. I find honesty works best with you. He settled his hat. Think about it. I'll ask again when I return. After he left, Iris sat staring at the blue fabric, a dress for a tall woman, commissioned by a man who didn't see height as a flaw. The simplicity of it made her throat tight. "You'll go to the dance." May's voice from the doorway wasn't a question. "I haven't decided." "Child, that man just told you his sister is tall as a pine tree, like it was the most natural thing in the world. He doesn't care that you tower over most men. Probably likes it means he doesn't have to bend down to talk to you." That evening, Iris began cutting the pattern for Cassian's sister's dress. She worked by lamplight, adjusting proportions from long practice. Extra length in the sleeves, longer waist, fuller skirt to balance the height. All the little tricks she'd learned making her own clothes for a body that never fit standard patterns. The town had grown quieter around her these past weeks. Oh, there were still whispers. Still men like Garrett who made crude comments when they thought she couldn't hear. But there were also women who nodded respectfully on the street. Children who stared with curiosity rather than mockery. Men who touched their hat brims in greeting. And there was Cassian Wade, who looked at her like she was exactly the right size. 3 days into his absence, the first snow fell. Fat, lazy flakes that dusted the mountains like sugar. Iris stood at her window, watching it accumulate, when someone pounded on May's front door. "It's Widow Hawkins." A young boy gasped when May answered. "She's taken sick, real bad. Doc Morrison says she needs tending, but her daughter's with child and can't travel." Iris was already reaching for her shawl. She'd met Constance Hawkins at the Mercantile, a sparrow of a woman who'd outlived 3 husbands and still had opinions about everything. The widow's cabin sat on the town's edge, small but tidy. Doc Morrison met them at the door, medical bag in hand. "Pneumonia," he said tersely. "Caught it early, but at her age, she needs constant care for the next few days. Watching her breathing, keeping her warm, getting broth into her when she can take it." "I'll stay," Iris said. The doctor eyed her skeptically. "It's not easy work. She's delirious. Might not know you, might say things." "I've tended sick before." For 3 days, Iris barely left the widow's bedside. She spooned broth between fever-cracked lips, changed sweat-soaked bedding, kept the fire burning through long nights. The widow rambled in her delirium about dead husbands, lost children. The early days when Deer Hollow was just a dream and a sawmill. "Too tall," she muttered once, gripping Iris's hand. "That's what they said. Too tall for a lady. Showed them. Didn't I married 3 times? Buried them all? Height don't matter when you're lying down." Iris smoothed the older woman's hair. "No, ma'am, it doesn't." On the 3rd night, the fever broke. The widow opened clear eyes, focused on Iris's face. "You're that tall girl, the one Merritt Kane was fool enough to reject." "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Means you're available for better men." She coughed weakly. "That Wade boy's been sweet on you. Don't you let him get away because you're scared." "I'm not." "Every tall woman's scared. Scared of taking up too much space, being too much woman. I was beautiful once, you know, and tall, tallest girl in 3 counties. Her eyes grew distant. "First husband loved it. Said he'd married himself a goddess. Second one tolerated it. Third tried to make me hunch. I outlived them all." "You should rest." "I'll rest when I'm dead. You listen to me, girl. That Cassian Wade's got sense. Knows a woman's worth ain't measured in how far up her head reaches. You stand tall next to him, stand tall and don't apologize for it." By morning, the widow was sitting up demanding proper tea, not this dishwater you call broth. Iris left her in her daughter's care and walked home through streets transformed by snow. The town looked different, dusted in white, softer somehow, its rough edges hidden. At May's gate, she found footprints in the fresh snow, large boots, recently arrived. Cassian stood in the parlor, still in his trail clothes, talking quietly with May. Both turned when Iris entered. "Heard you were tending Widow Hawkins," he said. "Came to check you were all right." "You just returned." "An hour ago. When I heard you were there alone," he shrugged. Wanted to make sure. Snow was melting in his dark hair. He'd ridden straight from the mountains to check on her. This man who claimed he wasn't saving her, just walking beside her. The widow's recovered, tough as boot leather. That one. Has to be, in this country. He smiled. Like someone else I know. May bustled out with transparent excuses about checking something in the kitchen. Iris and Cassian stood in comfortable silence. Snow falling soft outside the windows. "The dance is Saturday," he said finally. "My invitation stands, if you're interested." Iris thought of the widow's words, of standing tall without apology. "I'll need to finish your sister's dress first." "No rush. Christmas is weeks away yet." "Still, I like to finish what I start." "So do I." Something in his voice made her look up. His eyes were steady on hers, patient as mountains. "Saturday, then Saturday." He left with a smile that warmed her more than the parlor fire. Iris returned to her sewing, but her mind wandered to Saturday, to standing beside a man who saw her height as natural as snowfall. Outside, Deer Hollow settled under its white blanket, and in May's parlor, a tall woman stitched dreams into blue wool, one careful seam at a time. The blue wool dress for Cassian's sister lay finished on Iris's bed, pressed and perfect. She'd completed it 2 days before the dance, every seam a meditation on possibility. Now, Saturday evening cast long shadows through her window, and she faced her own wardrobe with uncommon nervousness. May appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "You're not wearing the brown." "It's serviceable." "So's a grain sack, but you don't wear those to dances." May pushed past her to the wardrobe. "What about the blue, the one you wore when you first started getting customers?" "Too formal." "Lord grant me patience." May pulled out the dark green wool Iris had been saving. "This one brings out your eyes." "It needs pressing." "Then we'll press it. You think I'm letting you go to your first dance in Deer Hollow looking like you're headed to muck stalls?" While May heated the iron, Iris sat at her small mirror, attempting something softer with her hair. Her hands, so sure with needle and thread, fumbled with pins and combs. "Here." May took over, her movements gentle. "You've got beautiful hair when you let it show, like mahogany in the lamplight." "It's just brown." "Nothing just about you, child. When are you going to see that—" A knock interrupted May's ministrations. Iris's stomach flipped, but it was only Mrs. Patterson at the door, holding a small box. "Heard you were attending the dance tonight," the older woman said stiffly. "Thought you might borrow these." Inside lay a pair of tortoiseshell hair combs, delicate and lovely. Iris stared at them, speechless. "They were my mother's." Mrs. Patterson continued. She was tall, too. Used to say pretty things helped people see the woman, not just the height. She cleared her throat. "Well, enjoy your evening." She left before Iris could properly thank her. May smiled, tucking the combs into Iris's hair. "See this town's coming around? Just took them time to see what Cassian saw right off." Another knock, firmer this time. Iris's hands clenched in her lap. "Breathe," May advised. "He's just a man." But when Iris opened the door, Cassian Wade looked like something more than just a man. He'd trimmed his hair, shaved close, wore a clean white shirt under a black vest that emphasized his broad shoulders. He held a small bunch of late asters, purple and white against dark green leaves. "Evening." His eyes traveled over her, taking in the green dress, the softer hairstyle, the borrowed combs. You look fine, Miss Delaney." "Thank you." She accepted the flowers, their fingers brushing. "You clean up well yourself." "May," he nodded to the older woman. "We won't be too late." "Better not be. I lock the doors at 10 sharp." But May's eyes twinkled. They walked through streets lit by lanterns hung for the occasion. Other couples moved toward the church hall. voices carrying on the cold air. Iris felt eyes on them, heard whispers start and stop. "They're staring," she murmured. "Let them." Cassian offered his arm. "Gives them something to talk about besides timber prices and who's courting who." "They're already talking about who's courting who." "Good. Saves me the trouble of taking out an announcement in the newspaper." She looked at him sharply. "Is that what this is, courting?" He stopped walking, turning to face her directly. "I'd like it to be, if you're willing, but if you just want company tonight, a friend to not dance with, that's fine too. Your choice, Iris, always your choice." The simple honesty of it made her throat tight. "I don't know what I want." "Fair enough. How about we start with not dancing and see where it leads?" The church hall glowed with warmth and light. Someone had strung autumn leaves along the walls, placed chrysanthemums in mason jars on the tables. A makeshift band fiddle, guitar, and accordion played in the corner. The floor was already crowded with couples. Their entrance caused a ripple of attention. Iris straightened her spine, lifting her chin beside her. Cassian stood solid and unmoved, his presence like a wall between her and any unkindness. "Cassian," a woman's voice called out. Sarah Henley approached, baby in her arms, husband trailing behind. "And Miss Delaney. How wonderful." She beamed at them both, adjusting the baby's blanket. "Little Margaret's thriving, thanks to you, growing like a weed." "She's beautiful," Iris said softly, touching the baby's tiny fist. "Takes after her mama," Tom Henley said proudly. "Miss Delaney, I never properly thanked you. What you did for Sarah." "Anyone would have—" "No," he interrupted firmly. "Not anyone. You saved them both." He glanced at Cassian. "You picked a good one. Wade." Before either could respond to that assumption, the music changed. A reel started up, couples forming lines. Cassian touched Iris's elbow. "Want to get some air? It's warm in here." They slipped out the side door onto a small porch. The night was crisp, stars sharp as glass overhead. Iris breathed deep, grateful for the space. "Thank you. I needed a moment." Crowds can be overwhelming. He leaned against the railing. "Especially when you're the tallest thing in the room besides the ceiling beams." She laughed, surprised. "You noticed?" "I'm 6'4" in my boots. I always notice ceilings." He smiled. "Spent my first winter here sleeping diagonal in a bunk built for normal-sized folks. Know what that's like?" "Yes," the word came out more emphatic than intended. "Beds, doorways, chairs, nothing's ever quite right." "The world's built for smaller people." He turned to face her. "Makes finding someone who fits all the sweeter." They stood in comfortable silence, music drifting through the walls. Inside, boots stomped and people laughed. But out here was peace. "Want to know something?" Cassian said quietly. "First time I saw you, standing on that platform like you were ready to take on the whole town, I thought there's someone who won't shrink herself for anybody's comfort." I was terrified. "Didn't show. You looked like a warrior queen surveying conquered territory." Iris laughed. "Conquered, I'd just been rejected by a man who advertised for a strong wife." "His loss." Cassian's voice held no doubt. "Merritt Kane wants a woman who makes him feel bigger. I want one who stands tall beside me." The door burst open. Margaret Brennan peered out, cheeks flushed with dancing. "There you are, Miss Delaney. Everyone's asking about my dress. You must come show them the needlework." She grabbed Iris's hand. "Come on, before the Pritchard sisters claim they could do better." Iris found herself pulled into a circle of women, all exclaiming over the embroidery on Margaret's cuffs. Questions flew. Where did she learn? Could she teach? Would she take more orders? The Pritchard sisters, twin spinsters who'd ruled Deer Hollow's social scene for decades, examined her work with magnifying spectacles. "Exceptional," one pronounced, "simply exceptional." Haven't seen work this fine since we visited San Francisco, the other agreed. You must do my Christmas tablecloth. From there, the evening became a whirlwind of introductions, commissions, and unexpected warmth. Women who'd whispered behind their hands now sought her expertise. Men nodded respectfully. Even Garrett kept his distance, though his glare could have curdled milk. Through it all, Cassian stayed nearby, not hovering, not possessive, just present. When she needed space, he'd drift away. When Garrett's friends got too close, he'd materialize at her elbow. It was, she realized, exactly what he'd promised walking beside her. You were right, she told him during a break between songs. About not dancing, this is better. Though I wouldn't mind one dance, if you're willing. He held out his hand. They're playing a waltz. Slower, less likely to trip over my own feet. Iris hesitated. The floor was crowded. They'd be the tallest couple by far. Everyone would stare. You've got a knife in your eyes every time a man talks, Cassian said softly. Except with me. Why? The question from the dressmaker's mannequin of her imagination made her breath catch. You don't try to make me smaller. Never will. His hand remained extended, patient. Dance with me. Iris, stand tall and dance with me. She placed her hand in his. They were terrible dancers. His experience ran to avoiding bar fights, hers to harvest celebrations where enthusiasm mattered more than skill. They stumbled, stepped on each other's feet, laughed when they turned the wrong direction. They were also perfect. The right heights, the right match. Two people who'd spent their lives ducking door frames and hunching at social gatherings. Finally, standing straight beside someone who understood. People are definitely staring now, Iris murmured as they swayed. Good thing we're not here for them. He spun her carefully. May tells me you've been working on Christmas orders already. News travels fast. She also says you barely sleep, barely eat when you're focused on work. I need to establish myself. Winter's coming, and you're allowed to breathe sometimes. His hand at her waist was warm, steady. You don't have to prove anything to anyone, least of all me. The music ended. They stood for a moment, still holding the dance position, neither willing to step away first. Iris, he began. Well. Merritt Kane's voice cut through the moment like a dull saw. The giant and the hermit. What a pair. He stood near the punch table, face flushed with drink and false courage. The hall quieted, sensing trouble. Merritt. Cassian's voice held warning. You're drunk. Go home. Why, so you can parade your prize around more, showing off what I rejected? Merritt laughed. Ugly. You're welcome to her. Wade, hope you've got a reinforced bed frame. The silence was complete now. Iris felt every eye, heard every held breath, her hands clenched into fists. But before she could speak, before Cassian could move, another voice cut through the tension. Merritt Kane, you're a fool and a coward. Widow Hawkins, recovered and fierce, pushed through the crowd with her walking stick. That girl saved my life not 3 days past. Sat with me through fever and chills. Never complained. Never asked for thanks. What have you done lately besides drink and wine? And delivered my baby, Sarah Henley added, stepping forward. When no one else could help. Made my anniversary dress. Mrs. Patterson joined in. Finest work I've seen. One by one, the women of Deer Hollow stepped forward, forming a wall between Iris and Merritt. The men followed Tom Henley, Doc Morrison, even Harold from the Mercantile. You're outnumbered, Kane, someone called out. Might want to reconsider your position. Merritt's face went from red to white. He looked around wildly, finding no support, no sympathetic faces. This is... He stumbled backward. You'll regret this. All of you. He fled. The silence held a moment longer. Then someone started clapping. Slow at first, then building, until the whole hall rang with applause. Iris stood frozen, overwhelmed. These people who'd stared and whispered, who'd made her feel like a curiosity, were applauding her, accepting her, choosing her over one of their own. Cassian's hand found hers. "Still got that knife in your eyes?" She looked at him through tears she refused to shed. "Maybe just a butter knife now." He laughed, and the tension broke. The music started again, couples returning to the floor, but Iris had had enough of crowds, enough of being the center of attention. "Take me home," she asked quietly. They slipped out together, gathering her shawl, leaving the warmth and noise behind. The walk back to May's was quiet, snow crunching under their boots. At the gate, Cassian stopped. "Thank you for tonight, for trusting me enough to go. Thank you for asking, for seeing me as someone worth asking." He touched her face gently, thumb brushing her cheek. "Been seeing that since the first night. Just been waiting for you to see it too." For a moment, Iris thought he might kiss her. The possibility hung between them like morning mist. But he stepped back, respectful of boundaries. "Good night, Iris." "Good night, Cassian." She watched him walk away, then turned to find May watching from the parlor window, grinning like a cat with cream. Inside, Iris unpinned her hair, removed the borrowed combs carefully. Her reflection looked different somehow. Not the height that would never change, but something in her eyes, her bearing. She stood tall. Widow Hawkins had said, "Tonight," for the first time in her life. She truly had, beside a man who stood tall with her, in a town that was learning to see her worth. The knife in her eyes had dulled to something softer. Not trust, not yet, but possibility. And that was enough for now. The storm rolled down from the mountains like an avalanche of white fury. By midnight, snow fell so thick that Iris couldn't see May's garden gate from her window. The wind howled through gaps in the walls, making the whole house groan like a ship at sea. She was measuring fabric for the Pritchard sisters' tablecloth when the pounding started urgent. Desperate fists against May's front door. "Lord have mercy! Who's out in this?" May hurried to answer. Iris, close behind. Young Timothy Brennan, Margaret's nephew, stood on the porch, snow-covered and gasping. Accident at the Ridge Camp wagon slipped. Men trapped. Doc Morrison's already headed up, but they need everyone who can help. Iris was already reaching for her heaviest cloak. "How many injured?" "Don't know, ma'am. 4, maybe 5. My uncle says one's pinned under the wagon." The boy's teeth chattered. "They sent me to gather folks." "Who's trapped?" May demanded. But Iris already knew. Something cold settled in her chest before Timothy even spoke. "Cassian Wade, ma'am. He was trying to free the horses when it rolled." The world narrowed to a single point of crystalline fear. Iris's hands moved without conscious thought, gathering medical supplies from May's kitchen. Clean cloths. Her sewing kit with its sharp scissors and strong thread. "You can't go out in this," May protested. "The ridge road's treacherous enough in good weather." "Then I'll be careful." Iris pulled on her boots, fingers steady despite the terror clawing at her throat. "He came for me. When he heard I was alone at Widow Hawkins's, he came straight from the mountains." May's protest died. She pressed a flask into Iris's hands. "Whiskey, for the pain." The rescue party gathered at the Mercantile, 6 men with lanterns and ropes. Doc Morrison checking his medical bag. They looked at Iris with surprise, but no argument. Tonight, they needed every able body. The climb to the ridge camp was a nightmare of wind and white. Iris tucked her face into her collar, following the bobbing lanterns ahead. Her height helped her longer legs eating distance, broader shoulders bearing the wind's assault. Still, by the time they reached the accident site, her lungs burned with cold. Lanterns revealed the disaster. A freight wagon lay on its side, one wheel spinning lazily in the wind. Boxes of supplies scattered like dice across the snow. And underneath, barely visible, a man's arm in a familiar patched coat. Cassian. She dropped to her knees beside the wagon, pawing snow away. His face emerged, white as the ground around him, eyes closed. He's alive, someone said. Been talking till just recent. Think the cold's getting him. Doc Morrison crouched beside her. We need to lift this wagon, quick and careful. His legs trapped, maybe broken. The men positioned themselves. On the count of 3, they heaved. The wagon rose inches. Just enough. Iris and the doctor pulled Cassian free, dragging him clear as the men let the wagon crash back down. Blood soaked through his pants leg. Doc Morrison cut the fabric away, revealing a gash from knee to ankle, bleeding sluggish in the cold. Need stitching, he said tersely. Here and now, before we move him, Miss Delaney, you ever stitch human flesh? Yes. Once. A farmhand who'd met the wrong end of a scythe, her mother guiding her hands, teaching her that skin was just another fabric, requiring different tension. Then you take the lower half. I'll work the upper, fast as you can. She threaded her needle with numb fingers. Around them, men held lanterns steady, creating a circle of light in the howling dark. Cassian stirred as the needle pierced his skin, a low groan escaping. Iris, his voice was thick, confused. I'm here. She kept stitching, small, neat sutures closing the wound. Stay still. You came, in the storm. You would have done the same. His hand found hers, gripping weakly. Different. I'm not worth... Hush. She squeezed back, then returned to her work. Save your strength for healing. They worked in efficient silence, doctor and seamstress, closing flesh instead of fabric. When finished, they wrapped the leg tight, fashioned a stretcher from wagon boards and rope. The journey down was worse than the climb. Cassian drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling about timber contracts and proper knots. Iris walked beside the stretcher, one hand on his shoulder, anchoring him to the living world. May had the spare room ready, fire blazing, water boiling. They transferred Cassian to the bed, piled quilts over his shivering form. Doc Morrison checked the stitches, nodded approval. Fine work. Miss Delaney, he'll need watching tonight. Keep him warm. Make sure fever doesn't set in. He paused at the door. I've got other injured to tend. Can you manage? Yes. And so began the longest night of Iris's life. She kept the fire fed, changed cold compresses for hot, spooned willow bark tea between Cassian's lips when he could swallow. He burned with fever despite the cold, tossing restlessly, calling out names she didn't recognize. Should have been faster, he muttered. Saw the wheel slipping. Should have warned them. You saved the horses, she told him, though he likely couldn't hear. Timothy said you got them free before the wagon rolled. You saved them. Near dawn, his fever spiked. He thrashed, nearly throwing off the quilts, strength alarming even in delirium. Iris climbed onto the bed, using her weight to keep him still, her height finally an advantage. I'm here, she whispered against his burning forehead. I'm here. I won't leave. He calmed at her voice, fingers tangling in her skirts. She stayed like that, half sitting, half lying, a human anchor in his storm. May found them that way as morning light crept through the windows. How is he? Fever's breaking, I think. Iris's voice was hoarse with exhaustion. He's sleeping deeper now. May brought tea, helped Iris shift to a chair without disturbing Cassian. You did good, child. Real good. He would have done the same. Maybe, but it means something different, coming from you. May studied her shrewdly. You know that. Don't you know what it means? You going out in that storm? Iris looked at Cassian's face, peaceful now in true sleep. The answer sat heavy on her tongue, tasting of truth and terror. I know. He woke near noon, clear-eyed and confused. Iris, what? Where? May's spare room. She leaned forward, checking his forehead. Cool, thank God. You've been here since last night. The wagon. I remember. He tried to sit up, winced. My leg. 27 stitches. Doc Morrison did half. I did the rest. She pressed him back down. You need to stay still. He caught her hand. You came for me, in that storm. You needed help. That's not why you came. She tried to pull away, but his grip held firm. Not forcing, just asking. No, she admitted. That's not why. Iris. Just her name, weighted with questions. She met his eyes, those deep-water depths she'd grown to trust. I was afraid. When Timothy said you were hurt, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only move. Why? The question hung between them. She could deflect, make excuses, retreat behind her walls. But he'd nearly died under that wagon. Life was too short, too fragile for anything but truth. Because you see me, not the curiosity, not the too tall woman who doesn't fit, just me. And if I lost that, if I lost you... Her voice broke. He pulled her hand to his chest, over his heart. She felt it beating, steady and sure. You won't lose me. Too stubborn to die, May always says. Don't joke. Not joking. His thumb traced circles on her palm. When that wagon was coming down, all I could think was I never told her, never said the words. Cassian. I love you, Iris Delaney. Have since that first night when you stood on that platform like you were ready to fight the whole world. Love your strength, your pride, the way you gentle your hands for delicate work, but never gentle yourself for anyone's comfort. His voice roughened. Love that you're tall enough I don't get a crick in my neck talking to you. She laughed through tears she hadn't noticed falling. That's what you love my height. Among other things. He grew serious. I know you've got wounds. No trusting doesn't come easy. I'm not asking for words you're not ready to say, but I'm hoping you'll stay close while I heal. Let me court you proper, like I should have been doing all along. You have been courting me, in your way. Then let me do it in your way, too, whatever that looks like. She considered it this man who'd walked beside her without trying to save her, who'd made her feel right-sized in a world built too small, who'd nearly died trying to save horses he didn't even own. I'll stay, she said finally, to help you heal. And after, she squeezed his hand. We'll see. He smiled, eyelids already drooping with exhaustion. That's enough, for now. She stayed while he slept, keeping watch as snow continued to fall outside. May brought food. Updates from town, the other injured men were recovering. The horses were safe. The pass would be closed until spring now. Means Cassian's here for the duration, May observed. Going to need careful tending. I'll tend him. I know you will. May paused at the door. That spare room's awful cold at night. Might think about moving a cot in here, just to keep the fire watched. After she left, Iris smiled, subtle as a sledgehammer. That May... But she did move a cot in that night. And the next. Cassian's recovery was slow, the wound deep, the cold hindering healing. Iris tended him with the same precision she brought to her needlework, changing bandages, cleaning the wound, making sure he ate. You're spoiling me. He complained on the third day. Going to expect this treatment all the time. Then don't get injured all the time. She adjusted his pillows. Besides, you're a terrible patient. Keep trying to get up before you should. Hate being helpless. You're not helpless. You're healing. There's a difference. He caught her hand as she turned away. You don't have to let me in, just don't slam the door. The echo of his words from before made her pause. He watched her, patient as always, not pushing. The door's open, she said quietly. Has been for a while now. But you're still afraid. Yes. Of what? She sank into the chair beside his bed. Of belonging. Of letting myself believe this could last. of waking up one day to find you've realized I'm too much after all. Iris, he struggled to sit up, ignoring her protests. Look at me. She did, seeing pain that had nothing to do with his injury. I'm not him, not Merritt, not whoever else made you feel too big for the world. I'm just a man who knows what it's like to not fit the mold folks expect. He touched her face gently. You could never be too much, not for me. She leaned into his touch, walls crumbling like spring ice. I want to believe that. Then stay. Let me prove it, day by day, season by season, however long it takes. Outside, the blizzard finally exhausted itself, leaving Deer Hollow buried in pristine white. Inside May's spare room, two people who'd spent their lives standing alone learned what it meant to lean on each other. It was a beginning, tentative and fragile as new stitches, but like all good seams, it would hold. The December cold had settled over Deer Hollow like an iron blanket. Frost painted elaborate patterns on window panes, and breath came out in clouds that hung in the still air. Cassian's leg had healed enough for him to walk with a cane, though Iris still fussed when he pushed too hard. They sat by May's fireplace one evening, a companionable silence between them. Iris worked on a christening gown for the Henley baby while Cassian whittled a piece of pine, shavings curling onto the hearth. Penny for your thoughts, he said, not looking up from his work. Iris set down her needle. She'd been gathering courage all day for this conversation, and still the words stuck in her throat like pine pitch. I've been thinking about what you asked, about belonging. His knife stilled, but he didn't pressure her. Just waited, patient as winter. You think I'm afraid of men. The words came out measured, careful. I'm afraid of belonging. I remember. Do you want to know why? If you want to tell me. She stared at the fire, seeing other flames, other times. I was 17. There was a man, Benjamin Holt, son of the biggest landowner in our county. Handsome, charming, said all the right things. Cassian set down his whittling, giving her his full attention. He courted me for months, brought flowers, wrote poems, told me I was magnificent, like a goddess. He said, made me feel special, beautiful even. Her laugh was bitter. I was young enough to believe him. What happened? We were engaged. The whole county knew. My parents were thrilled the Holt family had money, influence. It was a good match. They said, better than a girl like me could expect. She picked up her needle again, needing something to do with her hands. 2 weeks before the wedding, I overheard him. He was drinking with his friends. Didn't know I was in the next room. They asked him why he'd chosen me, when he could have any girl in 3 counties. Cassian's jaw tightened, already knowing this story wouldn't end well. He laughed, said I was like a prize horse, good breeding stock, strong enough to bear plenty of sons. Said once we were married, he'd break me to saddle proper, teach me to duck my head and hunch my shoulders like a proper wife should, make me sleep in the barn if I forgot my place. The needle slipped, pricking her finger. She watched the blood bead, bright against pale skin. They all laughed, made jokes about taming wild mares, about how a tall woman just needed a firm hand to bring her down to size. Her voice stayed level, but her knuckles were white. He said the fun would be in the breaking. Iris. Cassian reached for her, but she pulled back. I called off the wedding that night. The scandal was significant. Benjamin told everyone I was hysterical, claimed I'd thrown myself at him and he'd rejected me. People believed him. Why would a Holt lie? She finally met his eyes. I learned something then. Men who say they love your strength often just see it as something to conquer. The fire crackled, filling the silence. Cassian's face was a study in controlled anger, not at her. She realized, but for her. Is he still living? Does it matter? Might take a trip to Missouri someday. Have a conversation with Mr. Holt about how to speak of ladies. Despite everything, she smiled. He married the banker's daughter 6 months later. Tiny little thing, barely 5 feet. I heard she cries at church socials. His loss. Was it? She set aside the christening gown. He wanted to break me. Cassian wanted to own me, make me small. How do I know? How do I trust that won't happen again? He was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words with care. You know what I did before I came to Deer Hollow? She shook her head. Worked for my father. He owned a ranch in Texas, ran cattle, expected his sons to follow in his footsteps, marry the right girls, produce the right grandsons. His smile was wry. I was the disappointment. Too quiet, he said, too thoughtful. Spent more time reading than roping. You seem plenty capable to me. Learned that later. But at 20, I was just the son who didn't fit. He arranged a marriage for me, daughter of another rancher. Sweet girl, pretty. Probably would have been happy enough. He stared at the fire. I left instead. Couldn't stomach the idea of living someone else's plan for my life. What happened to her? Married my brother. They seem content. He turned to face her fully. Point is, I know what it's like to have someone try to force you into a shape that doesn't fit. Difference is, I could leave, start over. You. I carried it with me. Because they tried to break something essential in you. Something that makes you who you are. He leaned forward. I need you to hear this. Really hear it. I don't want to break you. Iris, don't want to tame you or train you or make you smaller. I want to build something with you, as equals, as partners. Benjamin said that too, at first. Did Benjamin ever cook his own meals, mend his own clothes, build his own life without servants or family money? No. Then he never learned that real strength isn't about controlling others. It's about standing on your own feet and choosing who stands beside you. His voice roughened. I choose you. Iris, not to own, not to break, to love, as you are. She felt tears threaten. I want to believe that, want it so much it terrifies me. Then let's go slow. No promises you're not ready to make, no steps you don't want to take. He held out his hand. Just don't shut me out. Give us a chance. She looked at his offered hand, calloused, scarred, honest. Slowly, she took it. I loved him, she admitted. Or thought I did. Young love, foolish and blind. It made the betrayal worse. And now I know the difference. She squeezed his fingers. What I feel for you, it's not young or foolish. It's roots deep, grown slow and careful. It scares me more because it's real. He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. Real things usually are scary, but they're worth fighting for. May chose that moment to bustle in with hot cocoa. You two look serious as a funeral? What's got you so somber? Just talking, Iris said. May's sharp eyes missed nothing the joined hands. The tear tracks on Iris's cheeks. The protective way Cassian angled his body. Well, don't talk too late. Got an early delivery tomorrow. Iris, the widow Hawkins wants her new cloak before Christmas. After she left, Cassian stood carefully, testing his healing leg. Walk with me. It's freezing outside. Just to the porch. I need to say something, and I need the cold to help me say it right. Bundled in coats and scarves, they stepped onto May's front porch. The night was crystal clear. Stars sharp as glass shards against black velvet. Their breath mingled in the frigid air. When that wagon was falling, Cassian began. I thought about dying, not the pain or the fear, but what I'd leave undone, and the biggest regret was you. He turned to her. Not having more time, not saying the words enough, not proving that love doesn't have to be a cage. Cassian, let me finish. He cupped her face in both hands. I can't promise I'll never disappoint you. Can't promise I'll always say the right thing or know what you need. But I can promise this: I will never, ever try to make you less than you are. Your strength, your height, your fierce independence, they're not flaws to fix. They're gifts to cherish. She covered his hands with hers. I'm difficult, stubborn. I've got walls so high even I can't see over them sometimes. Good thing I'm patient, and tall enough to climb walls when needed. That startled a laugh from her. Is everything a height joke with you? Would you prefer short jokes? I know fewer of those. She laughed again, feeling something loosen in her chest. The fear was still there, might always be there, but alongside it grew something stronger hope. I can't promise to be easy to love, she warned. Already aren't, hasn't stopped me yet. Or that I won't panic sometimes, pull away when old fears surface. Then I'll wait until you come back. What if I don't? He smiled, soft and sure. You will. Know how I know?
How?
Because you're here now, on this porch, in the freezing cold, having the hardest conversation of your life. That's not the action of someone who runs. He pressed his forehead to hers. That's the choice of someone who stays. She closed her eyes, breathing him in wood smoke and pine, leather and honest work. I choose to stay. Even though you're scared. Especially because I'm scared. She pulled back to look at him. Courage isn't the absence of fear. My grandmother used to say, it's moving forward despite it. Wise woman. She would have liked you. I think you're both stubborn as mules. They stood there a moment longer, the cold forgotten in the warmth between them. Finally. Iris shivered, and Cassian ushered her back inside. Thank you, he said as they shed their coats, for trusting me with your story, for giving us a chance despite it all. Thank you for being patient, for understanding why I need time. Take all you need. He kissed her forehead gently. I'm not going anywhere. As he made his careful way back to the spare room, Iris touched the spot his lips had warmed. The christening gown waited by her chair, patient as its creator. She picked it up, fingers finding the rhythm of stitches. For the first time since Benjamin Holt's betrayal, she allowed herself to imagine a future. Not a cage, not a breaking, but a building, two people choosing each other daily, constructing something strong enough to weather any storm. The needle flashed in firelight as she worked, each stitch a small act of faith. Outside, winter held Deer Hollow in its grip. Inside, something new and fragile and precious took root. She was afraid of belonging, but perhaps, with this patient man who saw her truly, she could learn to be brave. One stitch at a time, one choice at a time, one day at a time, until fear gave way to trust, and trust bloomed into something that looked very much like home. The church hall glowed with lantern light and winter festivities. Pine boughs draped every surface, their sharp scent mixing with cinnamon and cloves from the mulled cider. The whole town had turned out for Deer Hollow's Christmas celebration. Voices raised in carols and laughter. Iris stood near the refreshment table, wearing a new dress she'd made for the occasion, deep burgundy wool that brought out the warmth in her complexion. She'd even let May pin her hair in a softer style, though she'd drawn the line at ringlets. You look beautiful, Sarah Henley said, bouncing baby Margaret on her hip. That color suits you perfectly. Thank you. Iris still felt awkward accepting compliments, but she was learning. How's little Margaret? Growing like a weed. Doc Morrison says she'll be tall like her daddy. Sarah smiled. Maybe tall like the woman who brought her safely into the world. Across the room, Cassian stood with a group of loggers, his cane replaced by just a slight limp. He caught her eye and smiled, that private smile that made her stomach flutter even after weeks of courtship. He can't stop looking at you, Sarah observed. That man's completely smitten. The feeling's mutual, Iris admitted, surprising herself with the honesty. The musicians struck up a reel, and couples moved to form lines. Cassian made his way over, steady despite his healing leg. Dance with me. Your leg is fine for a slow dance. They'll play a waltz soon. He offered his arm. Unless you'd rather not dance with me in front of everyone. She heard the question beneath the question. Was she ready to publicly claim this thing between them, to stand before the town as Cassian Wade's woman? I'd love to dance. They waited through 2 reels, watching others spin and laugh. The Pritchard sisters held court near the dessert table, showing off their new tablecloth Iris's handiwork to anyone who'd look. Harold and Margaret Brennan attempted a complicated step and dissolved into giggles when they tangled. Even Doc Morrison had brought his wife, the 2 of them moving with the practiced ease of long partnership. Then the waltz began, slow and sweet. Cassian led her onto the floor, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers with gentle certainty. "Still the worst dancers here," he murmured as they swayed. "Speak for yourself. I've been practicing." "With who?" His eyes narrowed playfully. "Should I be jealous?" "With May. She leads. I follow. She's barely 5 feet tall, so it's interesting." He laughed, spinning her carefully. Around them, other couples moved in elegant circles, but Iris only had eyes for the man in her arms. He dressed up tonight, clean white shirt, string tie, his dark hair neatly combed. He was handsome in that rough-hewn way of mountain men, but it was his eyes that caught her, full of warmth and promise and patience. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I'm happy, here, now, with you." The admission came easier than expected. "It still surprises me sometimes." "What does—" "Being happy, feeling like I fit somewhere." She gestured at the hall. "These people who whispered and stared when I arrived, now they're friends, customers. Some days I forget I was ever the rejected mail-order bride." "Good, that's not who you are anyway." "No, then who am I?" He considered, leading her through another turn. "You're Iris Delaney, seamstress, midwife, maker of beautiful things, friend to May, savior of Sarah Henley, tender of sick neighbors." His voice dropped. "Woman I love." Her breath caught. He'd said the words before, but somehow here, surrounded by the community that had become theirs, they carried new weight. "Cassian." "No pressure, just truth." He pulled her closer. "Take your time. I'll still be here." The music ended, but they stayed in position a moment longer. Around them, Deer Hollow celebrated a town that had tested her, challenged her, and ultimately embraced her. And at its center, this man who saw her true. "Excuse me." The voice was sharp, unpleasant, too familiar. Merritt Kane stood behind them, wearing his best suit and a sneer. He'd been drinking, she could smell the whiskey, but his eyes were clear and mean. "Merritt." Cassian's voice carried warning. "Not tonight." "Why not? Isn't this perfect? The giant and her tame bear. Playing house." He swayed slightly. "You know what they call you behind your back's Beauty and the Beast, though they argue about which is which." The hall had gone quiet. That particular stillness that precedes storms. Iris felt every eye, but for once, the weight didn't crush her. "Actually," she said calmly, "I've heard what they call us, star-crossed lovers. Some say, perfect match. Say others, misses. Patterson calls us that handsome couple with the matching height." Merritt's face darkened. "You think you've won something this town's charity is pity." "I think," Iris said, stepping forward so he had to crane his neck to meet her eyes, "that I've found something you'll never understand. Respect, partnership, love that builds up instead of tears down. You were nothing when you came here. Less than nothing. Rejected goods no man wanted. And yet, here I stand." She gestured at the hall, at the people watching, with work, friends, a future, while you— what do you have? Merritt, besides bitterness and empty bottles. His hand moved fast. Whether to strike or grab, she'd never know. Cassian moved faster, catching Merritt's wrist in an iron grip. "Touch her and lose the hand." His voice was quiet, deadly. "That's not a threat. That's a promise." "You'd fight me over her." Merritt tried to jerk free. This mannish creature who'll never be a proper wife." The sound of chairs scraping made them all turn. The men of Deer Hollow were standing Tom Henley, Harold Brennan, Doc Morrison, even some who'd mocked her that first day, one by one. They moved to form a wall behind Iris and Cassian. "The church hall ain't built for me," Tom Henley said, echoing words from the dressmaker's imagination. "But I'll stand taller anyway for folks who deserve it. Anyone who saved my wife and daughter has my loyalty," another added. "The ladies made this town better," Harold said firmly. "Can't say the same for you, Kane." Widow Hawkins pushed through the crowd, cane tapping. "6 years I've lived here, waiting for someone with spine enough to stand up to the small-minded fools. She's got more courage in her little finger than you've got in your whole body." "Some men want a wife to stand behind them," Cassian said, releasing Merritt's wrist. "I want one who stands beside me, equal partner, the kind of woman who'll face down a blizzard to save a man, who'll deliver babies and tend the sick, who makes beautiful things with her hands and refuses to apologize for taking up space." He turned to Iris, his back to Merritt in clear dismissal. "The kind of woman I'd be proud to call my wife, if she'll have me." The hall went silent except for someone's sharply indrawn breath. Iris stared at him, this man who just proposed in front of the whole town, in defense of her honor. "Cassian Wade," she breathed. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" He dropped to one knee, right there in the middle of the church hall, bad leg and all. From his pocket, he produced a simple gold ring. "Iris Delaney, you came to this town looking for one life and built another. You've shown us all what strength looks like, what courage means. You've made me want to be better than I am, just to be worthy of standing beside you." His voice shook slightly. "Will you marry me? Will you stand tall with me, for whatever comes?" She looked around the hall at faces that had gone from suspicious to accepting to protective. At May crying into her handkerchief. At Sarah clutching her baby. At the Pritchard sisters nodding approval. At Merritt Kane, small and bitter and irrelevant. Then she looked down at Cassian, this patient man who'd waited for her walls to crumble, who'd shown her that love didn't have to mean losing herself. "Yes," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yes, I'll marry you." The cheer that went up could probably be heard at the timber camps. Cassian surged to his feet, sliding the ring onto her finger with shaking hands. Then he kissed her, right there in front of God and Deer Hollow, while the crowd whooped and applauded. "This is a mistake," Merritt sputtered. "You'll regret—" "The only mistake," Mayor Buchanan interrupted, appearing with Sheriff Palmer, "is you disturbing our Christmas celebration. Sheriff—" "Come on, Kane, time to go home." They hauled him out, still protesting. The musician struck up a celebratory tune, and suddenly everyone was congratulating them, shaking hands, offering blessings. "Spring wedding?" Margaret Brennan asked. "Oh, I'll make your dress. It's the least I can do after all you've done for me." "We'll host the reception." The Pritchard sisters chorused, "Our house has the biggest parlor." "I'll make the cake," May declared, tears still flowing. 3 layers at least." Through it all, Cassian kept hold of Iris's hand, anchoring her in the joy of the moment. When they finally found a quiet corner, he touched her face gently. "I'm sorry, I planned to ask you proper, private-like, but when he said those things—" "You defended me in front of everyone?" "Always will." She looked at the ring, simple gold that caught the lantern light. "Mrs. Cassian Wade has a nice sound." "Mrs. Iris Wade, even better." He grinned. "Though I'd take your name if you preferred. Mr. Iris Delaney's got a ring to it." She laughed, feeling lighter than air. "You do that." "I'd do anything to make you happy, to make you feel valued, to show you every day that you're not too much, you're exactly enough." "I love you." The words came easy as breathing. "I should have said it weeks ago, but I love you, Cassian Wade." "Worth the wait." He kissed her again, soft and sure. Everything about you has been worth the wait. The celebration continued around them, Deer Hollow embracing their joy as its own, and in that warm hall, surrounded by acceptance she'd never dared dream of. Iris Delaney stood tall beside the man she loved, finally understanding what it meant to belong. Not behind someone, not despite her height, not by making herself smaller, but as herself, fully and completely, standing tall in love and life and hope for all the tomorrows to come. The winter afternoon light slanted through May's parlor windows, illuminating motes of dust that danced like tiny celebrations. Iris sat with Margaret Brennan, Eleanor Patterson, and the Pritchard sisters, discussing wedding plans while working on various sewing projects. The engagement ring on her finger still felt foreign, catching the light with every stitch. "A spring wedding will be perfect," Margaret said, sketching dress designs. "The mountain flowers will be blooming, lupines and Indian paintbrush everywhere." "Simple," Iris insisted. "Nothing too elaborate. That's not who we are." "Nonsense," Eleanor Patterson declared. "You've earned a proper wedding. The whole town wants to celebrate with you." Through the window, Iris could see Cassian helping Tom Henley repair the church hall steps. He moved carefully, favoring his healing leg. But his strength had returned. As if feeling her gaze, he looked up and smiled, that private smile that still made her breath catch. "Look at her," one of the Pritchard sisters giggled. "Mooning like a schoolgirl." "I am not mooning," Iris protested, though her cheeks warmed. "Of course not, dear," May said, entering with tea. "That's why you've been staring out that window for the past 10 minutes. The women laughed, but it was fond, inclusive. These gatherings had become regular since the engagement, the women of Deer Hollow slowly weaving Iris into their social fabric. She was learning their histories, their sorrows, their small triumphs. "I never thought I'd have this," she admitted quietly. "Women friends. A place to belong." Margaret squeezed her hand. "Well, you have it now, and we're not letting you go." The conversation turned to practical matters: food for the reception, flowers for the church, music for dancing. But Iris found herself only half listening, her thoughts drifting to the conversation she'd had with Cassian that morning. They'd been having breakfast at May's, a new routine since the engagement, when he'd grown serious. "I've been thinking about after the wedding," he'd said, "where we'll live." "Your cabin." She knew he had a place outside town, though she'd never seen it. "It's rough. Bachelor quarters, not fit for—" He'd paused, choosing words carefully. "I want to build us something new. Something that's ours from the start." "Build. I've got land picked out. Good spot. Close enough to town for your work, but private enough for peace. Southern exposure. Protection from the worst winds." His enthusiasm had grown. "I can do most of the work myself, with help from the boys at the mill. But I want your input on everything. The design, the rooms, all of it." "That's a big undertaking." "So is marriage. Might as well do both right." He'd taken her hand. "I want to build you something beautiful, Iris, something that fits us." Now, listening to the women plan her wedding, she thought about that future home, about building something together, plank by plank, room by room. "You're mooning again," May observed. Before Iris could protest, the parlor door burst open. Young Timothy Brennan rushed in, face flushed with cold and excitement. "There's trouble at the saloon. That Garrett fellow's causing a scene, saying terrible things about Miss Iris and Mr. Wade." The women exchanged glances. Garrett had been increasingly belligerent since the engagement, his crude comments growing bolder with each passing day. "Let the men handle it," Margaret said, but Iris was already standing. "No, I'm tired of letting others fight my battles." She set down her sewing. "It's time, mister. Garrett and I had a conversation." "Iris, no," Eleanor protested. "Ladies don't." "I'm not a lady. I'm a woman who's tired of being gossiped about by a man too cowardly to say things to my face. She grabbed her shawl. Besides, what's he going to do, hit me in front of witnesses? She strode out before they could stop her, though she heard them scrambling to follow. The cold air bit her cheeks, but anger kept her warm. Down Main Street, a crowd had gathered outside the Grand Peak Saloon. She could hear Garrett's voice, slurred with drink. Telling you, it ain't natural, woman that size. Man's got to be touched in the head to want. That's enough. Iris's voice cut through his tirade like a blade through butter. The crowd parted. Garrett stood on the boardwalk, bottle in hand, surrounded by his usual collection of malcontents. Cassian was there too, held back by Tom Henley and Doc Morrison, his face dark with controlled rage. Well, well, Garrett swayed, leering. The giant herself, come to defend your man's honor. My man doesn't need defending. His honor speaks for itself. Iris stepped closer, using every inch of her height. But I am curious why you're so obsessed with our relationship. Could it be jealousy? Laughter rippled through the crowd. Garrett's face went red. Jealous of him for catching you. For having someone, for being chosen. She kept her voice calm, pitched to Carrie. When's the last time a woman looked at you with anything but disgust? Mr. Garrett. You bit. Careful. Her voice dropped dangerously. The next word out of your mouth better be respectful, or you'll learn what these hands can do besides so. You threatening me. Educating you? She stepped onto the boardwalk, forcing him to back up. See, you've mistaken my courtesy for weakness, my restraint for fear, but I've birthed babies and saved lives, faced down blizzards and rebuilt my entire world. You're a small man with a loud mouth and nothing to show for it but empty bottles and emptier words. Some men want a wife to stand behind them, she continued, echoing Cassian's words from the church hall. But a real man, a strong man, wants a partner, someone to face life with, not cower behind. She glanced at Cassian, saw pride shining in his eyes. I found mine, and it eats at you, doesn't it? That someone like him chose someone like me, while you drink alone. Garrett raised the bottle. Whether to drink or throw, she'd never know. Cassian broke free of his friend's hold, but Iris was faster. She caught Garrett's wrist, using his momentum against him, and the bottle went flying. It shattered against a post, spraying whiskey across the boardwalk. You just took back every piece of dignity he tried to steal, Cassian said, wonder in his voice. And you didn't even raise your voice. Didn't need to. Iris released Garrett, who stumbled back. Small dogs bark loudest. The crowd laughed not at her, but with her, at Garrett, reduced to sputtering incoherence by a woman's words and decisive action. Sheriff Palmer pushed through. All right, Garrett, public drunkenness, disturbing the peace, attempted assault, let's go. As the sheriff hauled him away, Garrett shot one last venomous look at Iris. This ain't over. Yes, she said simply. It is. The crowd began to disperse, people nodding respectfully to Iris as they passed. Some of the men who'd stood silent during previous confrontations now met her eyes, ashamed but acknowledging her strength. Cassian reached her side, his hand finding hers. That was necessary. I was going to say magnificent. He touched her face, though I had plans to handle him myself. I know, but this was my fight. She leaned into his touch. I've spent so long letting others defend me, hiding behind courtesy and fear, but I'm not afraid anymore. What changed? You, this town, knowing I have a place here, people who accept me. She smiled. Hard to fear bullies when you've got real strength behind you. May and the other women had caught up, all talking at once. The Pritchard sisters were particularly vocal about Iris's unladylike behavior, though their eyes sparkled with approval. Did you see his face when she caught his wrist? like a landed trout. Mother always said the best defense against a bully was to stand taller, Widow Hawkins observed, having appeared from nowhere, as was her habit. You stood tall today, girl. As they walked back to May's, Cassian kept Iris's hand in his. You know there'll be talk. Proper ladies don't confront drunks in the street. Good thing I'm not a proper lady, then. She squeezed his fingers. Just a tall woman who knows her worth. And makes others see it, too. He stopped walking, turning to face her. Every day, you become more yourself. Stronger, surer, taller in spirit if not in body. He struggled for words. It's like watching the sun rise, slow and steady and inevitable. Poetic for a mountain man. You inspire poetry. He grinned. Bad poetry, but poetry nonetheless. They reached May's gate just as snow began to fall. Fat flakes that promised another storm. Inside, the women were already dramatizing the confrontation, each telling growing more elaborate. And then she lifted him clean off the ground. She did not, Iris protested, laughing. Might as well have, Margaret said, the way you faced him down, like David and Goliath. Except Goliath won this time. I thought I was David in this scenario, the underdog. No, dear, Eleanor Patterson said firmly. You're definitely Goliath, and we mean that as the highest compliment. As the afternoon wore on, and stories were told and retold, Iris felt something settle in her chest. Not just acceptance, but belonging. These women had watched her confront the town bully and saw not something mannish or improper, but strength they admired. I should go, Cassian said as darkness fell. Early morning at the mill tomorrow. Iris walked him to the door. Standing in the entrance where cold air met warm. Thank you, she said, for letting me fight my own battle, for not trying to save me. Told you the first night I ain't saving you, just walking beside you. He kissed her gently. Though watching you handle Garrett was something, remind me never to make you angry. You never. She leaned into him. You see me too clearly to make that mistake. I do see you. His voice went serious. And what I see gets more beautiful every day. After he left, Iris returned to find the women deep in wedding plans again. But now the conversation included her confrontation with Garrett, weaving it into the narrative of her time in Deer Hollow like another thread in a tapestry. You know what I love about this, Sarah Henley said, baby Margaret sleeping in her arms. My daughter's going to grow up in a town where she saw a tall woman stand up to a bully and win, where being strong isn't something to hide. To tall women, May raised her teacup. To strong women, Eleanor corrected. To women who stand tall, regardless of height, Widow Hawkins amended. They toasted with tea and laughter, and Iris felt the last of her walls crumble. She'd faced her tormentor not with violence, but with truth. She'd stood tall not just in body, but in spirit. And in a few months, she'd stand beside Cassian Wade as his equal, his partner, his wife, not behind him, not beneath him, but beside him. Tall and proud and unashamed. Spring came to Deer Hollow in a rush of snowmelt and wildflowers. The mountains shed their white cloaks, revealing green slopes dotted with lupine and larkspur. Birds returned in chattering flocks, and the air smelled of pine sap and possibility. Iris stood before the full-length mirror May had borrowed from the Pritchard sisters, barely recognizing herself. The wedding dress Margaret had created was a masterpiece ivory silk that flowed like water, with delicate embroidery at the neckline and cuffs. Most importantly, it fit perfectly, crafted for her height rather than despite it. You look like a queen, Sarah breathed, adjusting the train. A tall, beautiful queen. I feel ridiculous, Iris admitted, though her smile betrayed her. All this fuss for one day. Not just any day, May corrected, pinning orange blossoms in Iris's dark hair. The day you claim your happiness in front of God and everybody. Through the window, she could see townspeople gathering at the church, The whole of Deer Hollow had turned out, dressed in their Sunday best. Even the logging crews had come down from the mountains, scrubbed and uncomfortable in clean shirts. Nervous, Eleanor Patterson asked. Handing her the bouquet wildflowers Cassian had gathered himself from their future home site. Terrified, Iris admitted. Not of marrying him, just all those eyes. Then don't look at them, Margaret suggested. Look at him, only him. A knock interrupted. Ladies, it's time. The walk to the church felt both endless and instant. Iris had refused the traditional giving away she was no man's property to transfer. Instead, she walked alone, tall and proud. While the wedding march played on Mrs. Morrison's slightly out-of-tune piano, the church doors opened, and there was Cassian. He stood at the altar in a new black suit, his weathered face clean-shaven, dark hair carefully combed, but it was his expression that stopped her heart wonder and joy and love so pure it took her breath away, as if he couldn't quite believe she was real. Was choosing him in front of everyone. She forgot the crowd, forgot her nerves, forgot everything but the man waiting for her. Her steps grew surer, her spine straighter. By the time she reached him, she was smiling so wide her cheeks hurt. You came, he whispered, taking her hands. Did you doubt it? Never, but seeing you like this, he shook his head, words failing. Reverend Phillips cleared his throat. Dearly beloved, we gather today to witness something special. Two people choosing each other, choosing to build a life together in this harsh but beautiful country. The ceremony passed in a blur. Iris heard herself speaking vows, heard Cassian's voice rough with emotion as he promised to love, honor, and cherish. But what she remembered most was the moment before the kiss when he took off his hat and looked at her with such reverence it made her eyes burn. Some might say, he said softly, his additional vows, that a man who can't protect his wife isn't much of a man. But I say a man who tries to cage strength, to make it smaller for his comfort, isn't a man at all. Iris, you swore no man would touch you that first night unless he proved himself worthy. I pray I've proven it. I pray I keep proving it, every day, for the rest of our lives. You have, she whispered. You do. Then by the power vested in me, Reverend Phillips beamed. I pronounce you husband and wife. Cassian, you may kiss your bride. He cradled her face in his hands, thumbs brushing tears she hadn't known were falling. I love you, Mrs. Wade. I love you back, Mr. Wade. The kiss was gentle, reverent, a promise made flesh. Around them, Deer Hollow erupted in cheers, hats flew, women dabbed eyes, and someone, probably one of the loggers, let out a whoop that rattled the windows. They walked back down the aisle together, her hand on his arm, both of them glowing. Outside, the spring sun blessed them with warmth, and the town showered them with rice and flowers and good wishes. The reception at the Pritchard sisters' house overflowed with joy. May's 3-layer cake stood proud on the table, surrounded by dishes the townswomen had prepared. The furniture had been pushed back for dancing, and the same musicians from the harvest dance tuned their instruments. Speech, someone called. Let's hear from the groom. Cassian stood, raising his glass of cider. I'm not much for speeches, but I want to say this. When Iris stepped off that train last October, this town didn't know what to make of her. Truth be told, neither did she. But I saw something that first night, a woman who wouldn't shrink herself for anyone's comfort, who stood tall even when the world tried to make her small. He turned to Iris. You asked me once why I wasn't afraid of the knife in your eyes. Truth is, I was not of the blade, but of not being worthy of the woman who wielded it. Every day since. You've shown this town what courage looks like, what strength means, what love can build when it's based on respect instead of control. His voice grew thick. I swore no man would touch her that first night unless he proved himself. Well, she touched all of us, delivered babies, saved lives, made beautiful things, stood up to bullies. She touched our hearts just by being herself. And somehow, miracle of miracles, she chose to touch mine most of all. He raised his glass higher. To my wife, who stands tall in all ways, and to the town that learned to see her true. To Iris, the crowd roared. She stood then, surprising everyone. I need to say something too. The room quieted. She looked around at these faces, some who'd mocked her, some who'd doubted her, all who'd eventually accepted her. I came here as one woman and became another. Not smaller, not quieter, not less, but more. More myself than I'd ever dared be. She found Cassian's eyes. This man gave me the safety to grow. This town gave me the space to stand. And all of you gave me something I'd never had a place to belong. She raised her own glass. To Deer Hollow, to new beginnings, to standing tall, whatever your height. The cheer that went up could probably be heard in the next county. They danced then better than before, practice having smoothed their rough edges. Other couples joined them, swirling around the floor in a kaleidoscope of calico and wool. Even Widow Hawkins took a turn, cackling as Cassian carefully led her through a reel. No regrets, he asked when they were dancing alone again, the sun setting through the windows. None. You... Only one. At her alarmed look, he grinned. That I can't marry you again tomorrow. As the evening wound down, they slipped away to the porch. Their new house waited, still being finished, but far enough along for habitation. Cassian had kept his promise, building something that fit them both. High ceilings, tall doorways, windows that framed the mountains like paintings. Ready to go home, Mrs. Wade. With you always. They left amid a shower of good wishes and knowing smiles. May pressed a basket of food into their hands. The Pritchard sisters fussed over Iris's traveling cloak, and Tom Henley had decorated Cassian's wagon with flowers and ribbons. As they drove away, Iris looked back at the glowing windows of the Pritchard house, at the town that had become hers. What are you thinking? Cassian asked. That I swore no man would touch me that first night. I was so angry, so afraid. I thought strength meant standing alone. And now, she leaned against his shoulder, feeling his warmth, his solidness. Now I know strength can also mean choosing who stands with you, letting yourself be touched by love, by community, by belonging. Speaking of touching, his voice dropped to that tone that made her shiver. Cassian Wade. What, we're married now. I'm allowed to think such things. She laughed, free and bright in the spring evening. Yes, you are. And yes, I am too. The wagon rolled through the evening, carrying them toward their new life. Behind them, Deer Hollow settled into night, oil lamps glowing like earthbound stars. Ahead, their house waited on its hill, ready to shelter the love they'd chosen to build. No more walls, Cassian asked softly. No more walls, only doors, and windows, and places for love to enter. He kissed her temple. And stand tall. Always, together. The stars came out one by one, blessing their journey. And if anyone had been watching, they would have seen something beautiful, two tall figures on a wagon seat, leaning into each other, building a life measured not in height or propriety, but in the simple, revolutionary act of choosing each other. Every day, every season, every moment. Standing tall, standing together, standing in love. Forever and always. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope it touched your heart as much as it touched mine while sharing it with you. Please comment below and let me know where in the world you're listening from. I'd love to connect and hear your thoughts about Iris and Cassian's journey. If you enjoyed this tale of love and courage in the Old West, please subscribe to Wild West Stories. 1850, give this video a like, and hit that hype button to help more people discover these stories of strength, hope, and standing tall no matter what the world throws at you. Until next time, partners.